Broadcasting live from Rochester, New York. Giving you 3 hours of freedom to explore all the news, all the issues, the full reality behind the veil of the 24/7 propaganda, mind control, mind job that is the American national security empire. Sorting out the real from the fantasy, the truth from the illusion. This is Truth Out Radio. Live with Richard Dolan. In the name of...
Good evening, everyone. I'm Richard Dolan. You are listening to Truth Out Radio on the Global Radio Alliance. I'm so happy to be back here with you again on this evening of November 17, 2012. I'm excited about tonight's show. I have a special guest on for tonight. Not that other guests of Truth Out Radio aren't special, because they are. But I do believe that tonight's guest will be of special interest to many of you listening. I have tonight one of the world's leading experts in what is known as geoengineering. Think chemtrails. In fact, Dane was an assistant, close assistant to Michael Murphy in Michael's production of What in the Hell Are They Spraying, which recently came out with a sequel, Why in the Hell Are They Spraying? Both of those documentaries I have seen. I think they're both excellent. Dane this is what he's all about. Geoengineering, chemtrailing. He's going to have a lot to say to you about this. I spoke to him earlier this week. He's very engaging, extremely knowledgeable. And more than that, he is a man on a mission. He wants to educate the world on what is going on, and he is excited about being on tonight. That will be in 1 hour. And then he'll be available for an hour of call-in. So get your game on. If you want to call in, get some good chemtrailing questions ready. Chemtrailing, weather modification, HARP, all of it. It's all on the table because he's into all of it. He's got a lot to say. So that will be for the last 2 hours. And first hour, I'm going to just do a little my own thing as is my wont. I like to do a little bit of national security, global policing, future of the world stuff, mixed in to a greater or lesser extent with my thoughts on the UFO phenomenon, which I do every week. That's what I like. I do want you to take the phone number down so that in the third hour you can call in. I've said this number many times, but I want to say it again in case you haven't heard. 1-855-GRA-LIVE. So easy, right? That's 1-855-472-5483. We have a great chat room. I talk about it every week. I love the chat room. Just go to globalradioalliance.com and you click the chat tab and shazam, you're in there. Now, I've only got an hour for myself to do my little tap dance before the world, so let me just get right down to it. I'm going to start off with a piece of news that is a little bit lighthearted, I suppose. It's made the rounds lately, last day or so, and that is, yes, the Twinkie is dead. You've heard about this. No more Twinkies. And I guess what basically happened is that Hostess Brands Incorporated announced that it was closing shop. It was all done, liquidating, selling off its brands, its facilities, all of its equipment. And apparently, I'm not really expert here. I'm just kind of gleaning this. The culprit that's being blamed are the unions. The union, the Hostess Union, essentially the Bakery, Confectionery, Tobacco Workers, and Grain Millers International Union, BCTGM, continue to make demands that Hostess said, no, we can't do it. We're going to close up if you keep making the demands you're making. Well, apparently it was true because Hostess is done. They are a done deal. I personally do not support the argument of blaming it all on the unions. I think that's a really short-sighted, foolish argument, and I am seeing this here pretty widespread. I think it's very short-sighted. But listen, man, okay? Let's just talk Hostess for a second and Twinkies. Do we really defend the freaking Twinkie at this stage in the game? Ho-Hos, Wonder Bread. Let's get real. This is a company that produced poison for the world. I will not mourn their passing. Done. Enough said. Hostess is done. Let us move on. The real news. The shape of things to come. Now, again, I'm very, very happy about the wonderful friends that I have in this world because, honestly, I would not be able to put together a really cool 2 to 3 hours of fresh news every week if I did not have brilliant, dedicated friends out there in this world bringing these things to my attention. So this is an article by a great writer, a man whose several of his books I have read in the past, a man named Alfred McCoy, an article brought to my attention by my friend Jonathan Wilbanks of Conscious Life News. Jonathan's a really intelligent young man, exactly the kind of guy that the world needs to for the future. We need thousands and millions of people like Jonathan, in my opinion, who is out there, who really cares, wants to make the world a better place, and is intelligent and seeking answers, asking a lot of questions as well. This is an article he brought to my attention on my Facebook page by Alfred W. McCoy. Alfred McCoy, he's been doing his job a long, long time. There was a book he wrote in the 1980s on the CIA and heroin trafficking in the Golden Triangle of Southeast Asia. The name of the book escapes me offhand. I read it a long, long time ago. I think it's called The Politics of Heroin, if I'm not mistaken. That's Alfred McCoy. So the same Alfred McCoy has written an absolutely brilliant, fascinating article. It's called Beyond Bayonets and Battleships. Beyond Bayonets and Battleships, Space Warfare and the Future of U.S. Global Power. And as a matter of fact, this article is a kind of a truncated kind of snippet of a new book that he has just written, which is called Endless Empire, Spain's Retreat, Europe's Eclipse, America's Decline. And that's from University of Wisconsin, just 2012. And for the record, Alfred McCoy is a professor of history at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. So great historical program they have out there, incidentally. So a little bit about what Alfred McCoy has described in this article. I think you will find it as interesting as I do. He makes a reference to the recent presidential debate. And I'm sure you remember this, where Republican candidate Mitt Romney said that our Navy is smaller now than at any time since 1917. And McCoy quotes the withering comeback of Barack Obama, who says, well, Governor, we also have fewer horses and bayonets because the nature of our military's changed. The question is not a game of battleship where we're counting ships. It's what are our capabilities? And Barack Obama offered a little bit of a hint of what those capabilities might be. He says, what I did was work with our Joint Chiefs of Staff to think about what are we going to need in the future to make sure that we are safe. We need to be thinking about cyber security. We need to be talking about space. Indeed. So what McCoy does is he tries to have us look at the future in this article. And he says, it's 2025, and an American triple canopy of advanced surveillance and armed drones fills the heavens from the lower to the exo-atmosphere. Visualize this. You've got armed drones and advanced surveillance going through all layers of Earth's atmosphere. He says this is a wonder of the modern age. It can deliver its weaponry anywhere on the planet with staggering speed, knock out an enemy's satellite communication system, or follow individuals biometrically for great distances, along with an advanced cyber war capacity. This is going to be the most sophisticated militarized information system ever created. In terms of geopolitics, this is really the insurance policy of U.S. global domination that's going to go deep into the 21st century. People have said, well, the American century is over. Well, the American century of economic domination has certainly waned tremendously. Not military, we all know. He really works some interesting themes here. And one of the things that McCoy points out in this article is simply that the United States military has a long history of really pressing the boundaries of technological developments, and argues, I think, persuasively that during the major wars that the United States has fought, at least since the late 19th century in particular, that there's been that i.e. think Philippines, that there have been revolutions involved to manage information, to collect and manage information in a way to ensure domination. And he pointed out how the United States did this in the Philippines in 1898, where new technologies like, where is he got here? The management of statistical data, visual data. So the telegraph, the typewriter, Dewey Decimal System, and the punch card. All of these were 19th century inventions, and what he says is that they created synergies that led to a militarized application of America's first information revolution, and that this was used effectively to crush Filipino nationalist movements, basically an early version of Big Brother. This expanded during the First World War, where we have the creation of the Army's Military Intelligence Division, where you've got thousands and thousands of citizens compiling millions of pages of surveillance reports on American citizens. You get World War II, where this expands much, much greater into the OSS, the Office of Strategic Services. The problem, he noted, was that the OSS collected so much paperwork, so much data, that it was almost crushed under the weight of all that it was compiling, which prompted the computerization of intelligence. Particularly, he mentions the Vietnam War, where this really took off. He calls it a second American information regime. A lot of that, by the way, was used in the CIA's infamous Phoenix program. So they compiled a computerized database on the communist and civilian infrastructure as part of the Phoenix program, which, by the way, was all about extrajudicial executions, murder without trial. I would point out that one of the most prominent individuals in the UFO-related field was a member of the Phoenix program. That was Colonel John Alexander. Don't know what he did in that program, but he is known to have been a member of the Phoenix program. Just want that out there. Anyway, the point is, regarding the information revolution, is that this is all part of America's military history. Now let's enter the global war on terror, shall we? What McCoy argues here is that the counterinsurgency effort in Iraq, which of course was a total failure, and in Afghanistan, the Pentagon broke through the boundaries yet again. In Iraq, the U.S. military discovered the power of biometric identification and electronic surveillance of Iraqi citizens to pacify that nation. It built a huge biometric database with more than 1 million Iraqi fingerprints and iris scans that U.S. soldiers on the streets of Baghdad can access instantaneously by a satellite link to a computer center in West Virginia. And then look at the drones. You know, drones haven't been with us for all that long. The Predator drone was first launched as an experimental unarmed surveillance craft in the 90s. It was first deployed in 2000 for combat. And by 2011, we come to the advanced MQ-9 Reaper drone. That's the hunter-killer, the persistent hunter-killer type of drone, heavily armed with missiles and bombs as well as sensors that can read disturbed dirt at 5,000 feet. This is a drone that can read disturbed dirt at 5,000 feet and track footprints back to enemy installations. And to get an idea of how rapidly the drones have kind of become the centerpiece of America's military efforts, in 2004, the total flying time for all unmanned vehicles was 71 hours. For all of them, for the whole year, 71 hours. By 2010, it was 250,000 hours. Basically from almost 0 to 250,000 hours in 6 years' time. So that gives you an idea of just where this is all going. By just even a couple of years ago, by 2009, the Air Force and CIA had a drone armada of at least 195 Predators and 28 Reapers inside Afghanistan, Iraq, and Pakistan. It's obviously only grown since. Consider that the CIA is not any longer a passive intelligence collection agency. Not that it really ever was, but it was supposed to be. What it is now is it's got a permanent robotic paramilitary capability. The Pentagon now has created a U.S. Cyber Command. It's called Cybercom. Headquarters are in Fort Meade, Maryland, and a cyber warfare center at Lackland Air Force Base in Texas, staffed by 7,000 Air Force employees. In 2011, the Pentagon declared cyberspace as an operational domain. An operational domain. In other words, like land, air, and sea. Air, land, and sea are operational domains. So is cyberspace. It's on an equal footing. And it began putting its energy into developing its cadre of cyber warriors that are able to launch offensive operations, including, of course, as we all know, on Iran's nuclear facilities and Middle Eastern banks handling Iranian money. That is where we're at. That's the future of warfare. But it doesn't even end there. Because, of course, we're talking about armies, and I don't think really McCoy gets into it so much here. He's dealing with the future battlefield. But, look, it doesn't take a whole lot of imagination to ask yourself, you're going to have a wide range of incredibly sophisticated drones that will have loiter times not of days and weeks, but of years. 3, 4, 5 or more years at a time. In other words, one of the things that is coming up the road is simply solar-powered drones that can stay in very high altitudes for essentially indefinitely. These things can be armed or not. They can have incredibly sophisticated cameras. And there's going to be just hordes of them. What is the incentive for the United States defense industry not to want more and more and more of these? It's like a drug. Imagine like getting a new computer and you think, wow, this is like the greatest computer. I must have this computer. And then they just keep getting better and better and you become addicted, right, to getting the latest and the greatest computer or phone or whatever else is coming up. So there's this kind of addiction to that. But in the case of the U.S. military, it's even more because it's an addiction to power. They must have this. And one of the things McCoy pointed out, I hadn't really thought this through as clearly as McCoy did, which is that the Obama administration has really overseen a kind of revolution in the U.S. military capabilities. In other words, we've got it's a new information regime. It's fusing aerospace, cyberspace, biometrics, and robotics into something that is unprecedented. And in 2012, after years of ground warfare in all of the countries that America's been, and all the continuous expansion of the Pentagon budget, the Obama administration announced a leaner future defense strategy, which included large cuts in infantry, 14% cut in infantry strength. However, does that mean you have a weaker military? Well, guess again. So there's a greater emphasis on outer space and cyberspace, which is where they see the future. And I think that's pretty obviously the case. So the whole idea of the new U.S. military paradigm is going to try to integrate space and cyberspace and terrestrial combat through robotics, all seamlessly. And increasingly, the U.S., until there's any international law to control it, there is no international law, by the way, governing almost any of this stuff. So what it means is that the U.S. is just going to race as far into this as it can without anyone really telling it otherwise. I think you can see what the United States global strategy is. It's not to rule the world economically. It's to use military power to scare the hell out of the rest of the world, really, literally, to induce terror throughout the world through its surveillance and strike capabilities. Can you imagine if you're an American and you're like, well, I'm cool with that. Okay, fine. Imagine if any other nation on earth had this capability. Even like a political ally of America, like Britain. Hey, the Brits would be cool with it, obviously. Would the Yanks be cool with it? I don't think so. I doubt it. I think you'd get a lot of Americans who'd be very suspicious indeed of any other country, Britain or France or Germany. All of those are geopolitical allies of Washington, let alone China or Russia. And by the way, China and Russia are both doing their very best to develop these types of capabilities also. They're just not nearly as far along, not even close to where the U.S. is in all of this. In other words, what the U.S. is trying to do, very obviously, very overtly, is to have a kind of comprehensive global surveillance system for Earth, and that includes space as well as the atmosphere, using all types of robotics to coordinate. It's kind of like a flood of data that they want to get from biometric street-level monitoring, cyber data mining, a worldwide network of space surveillance telescopes, and then all of these types of drones that are going to be patrolling through all layers of the atmosphere. So what the system's basically going to do is like pull in all data possible, which might allow the U.S., even if it can't make a better mousetrap than any other nation, or as much anymore, the lethality of its global system. The idea is that it will be an equalizer for any other further loss of economic strength. Well, that's the real gamble. Will that be the case? Or will this be just one more illusion? After all, we think back to having the most advanced weapons. It's not always going to win your war. Nazi Germany had very advanced weapons during World War II, did not win the war. You have another danger, which is that the great weapons you may have might give you an illusion of omnipotence, which might incline the United States to even further misadventures that would only further drain its financial capabilities and further bankrupt the nation. Now, McCoy is writing this article. Again, I'm going to give you the title, Beyond Bayonets and Battleships, Space Warfare and the Future of U.S. Global Power. Just came out November 11th. It's very recent. I want to thank my friend Jonathan Wilbanks for bringing it to my attention. The thing about all of this is all contingent on no major upheavals or collapses occurring in the next few years. You know, what will happen if there's a, truly a global economic meltdown of the U.S. economy? It's possible. I actually don't think it's going to happen. I've had a lot of friends and colleagues who've been predicting it for years. I've listened to these predictions, and I'm kind of cold to them, even though, yes, it's obvious to me as well as anyone else that the U.S. economy is so bloated and bad and everything's wrong that it's only a matter of time before the plug is pulled. Somehow I don't think it's going to happen. Seems to me that this military strategy of scaring the hell out of the rest of the world is America's insurance policy. It's a scary world we're living in. I think I've run a couple of minutes over. Let me take a break now. We're going to come back. I will have a little more techno-geopolitical stuff I want to discuss, and also some loss of freedoms that is very, very important we need to know about, and a little more about UFOs. Mount Popocatépetl is still going. There's more stuff going on there, as well as the news of the UFO in Denver has really exploded all over the internet, and that's still a fascinating story. All of that we'll get back to after this break. I'm Richard Dolan. Thanks for being here.
This is the GRA at Night. Your number one source for alternative talk radio on the planet.
Richard Dolan. Thanks for joining me this week for Truth Out Radio on the Global Radio Alliance. I do this every week, for 3 hours every Saturday night. It's my most funnest time of the week when I do this with you. And I just want to remind you again, in less than a half an hour, less than 30 minutes, I will have Dane Wingington on as my guest. And he will be on for the next 2 hours, closing out the show. He'll be here to answer your calls as well. And again, he's an expert in geoengineering. Think chemtrails. He's a chemtrail expert. Was an assistant to Michael Murphy in the production of What in the Hell Are They Spraying? Really one of the best, maybe the best chemtrail documentary out there. Dane really knows his stuff, and he's excited about having the chance to be on the show and talk to all of us at Truth Out Radio. So don't miss this. I really think this was going to be one of the most sought-after shows in the archives after we get it in the tank. So, and it'll be great to listen to live. Before that, I just want to go over a couple of other things. One other article, I'm going to do this one quickly, sent to me by another of my buddies. I believe this was my friend, Professor Chaos, my Facebook buddy. Article by Chris Hedges. I really like Chris Hedges. And this is probably going to be the last election-oriented little news blurb that I do for this election cycle. But Hedges writes, the presidential election exposed again the death of the liberal class. Now, what he argues here is that now, before I even go here, I also read articles by conservatives who said that Romney lost because he wasn't conservative enough or he wasn't true enough to the conservative cause. So there's that side of it. This is what Chris Hedges is saying, that liberals who voted for Obama have betrayed themselves. They betrayed their core values, the core values that they used to define themselves. That is the rule of law, the safeguarding of civil liberties, the protection of unions, the preservation of social welfare programs, environmental accords, financial regulation, defiance of unjust war and torture, and the abolition of drone wars. Now that does pretty much encapsulate what we think of as the liberal position. You may agree with some or most or all of those things, or you may disagree with a few of them. For me, personally, the stuff that I care about has to do with safeguarding our rights as citizens in this nation and world. I am not into at all the bullshit wars that we've been fighting for the last decade or more. All the torture, invading countries that have really nothing to do with our situation so that we can just steal their stuff. I'm not into that at all. And so the point that Hedges is making here is that liberals vote for Obama. And he's like, why? Why are you voting for this guy? What is he really doing for you? Answer, zero. Zero, my man. He says they clung desperately to two issues, one or two issues, basically protecting a woman's right to have an abortion, a woman's right to choose, and issues dealing with gender equality. And that's it. He says, okay, so you're gonna go for that. That's what you're hanging on to. Well, guess what? He says, people, that's not a whole lot there. When you really look at the whole panoply of the erosion of rights that has gone on under the first 4 years of the Barack Obama administration, he says, really, yeah, I mean, it's not that it doesn't matter, but it's kind of small potatoes, frankly, when you look at the big picture, is what he's saying. And, of course, it goes without saying that this is not to say that George W. Bush was any better when he was president, because he wasn't, or that Mitt Romney would be any better, because he wouldn't be. Clearly he wouldn't be when you look at the record of these guys. But the point that Hedges is simply making is that the liberals have totally caved. And it's a sad state. And the other thing he points out is that you look back historically in history, and I think he's dead right here, when liberals in other nations are basically undermined and attacked, you are primed for kind of a fascist or communist type of situation. Think Weimar Republic Germany, when liberals were the unlucky monkey in the middle who got smacked around by the extreme right and extreme left of Weimar Republic Germany, 1920s Germany. And this is something that Hedges discusses here, and it is something that back in olden times I spent a lot of time looking into myself. I think it's really true. You may not like liberals, but I'll tell you something. Liberals are very healthy for any society if you want free and open opinions expressed. If you believe in liberty, get it, liberty, liberal, It's about freedom. It's about freedom. And when you are in a society where individual freedoms are being hacked away like a butcher hacking a piece of salami, smaller and smaller. Oh, just a little bit here. That's not such a big deal. Just, all right, a little more. Okay, let's just a little more now. Whack. And a little more still. The next thing you know, you got nothing left. And I will read you one very beautiful piece of writing that Hedges puts in this, which I'm very fond of. He says, the corporate state, faced with rebellion from within and without, does not know how to define or control this rising power, from the Arab Spring to the street protests in Greece and Spain to the Occupy movement. Rebellion always mystifies the oppressor. It appears irrational. It does not make sense. The establishment asks, what are their demands? Why do they hate us? What do they want? The oppressor can never hear the answer, for the answer is always the same. We seek to destroy your power. The oppressor, blind to the brutality and injustice meted out to sustain dominance and prosperity, escalates the levels of force employed to protect its privilege. The crimes of the oppressor are seen among the elite as the administering of justice, law and order, war on terror, the natural law of globalization, the right granted by privilege and power to shape and govern the world. Very beautiful writing. Thank you, Professor, for sending that our way. Got a couple of minutes left here. Popo Strikes Again. Mount Popocatépetl. Getting better at that. I still can't say it like I'm a Spanish speaker, but hey. Guess what? This is the third week in a row. Something is going on with this place. 2 weeks ago, I think it was 2 weeks ago, that everyone was talking about this large, illuminated, long cigar shape, but even longer than that, object apparently going into Mount Popo. This is near Mexico City. Everyone's got their own opinion on this. The YouTube video has got over 2 million views. And it's not even English language, man. It's Spanish-speaking video. And it's got, not that that would hinder its, getting lots of hits, but the biggest YouTube videos typically are English language oriented. This is a Spanish language news story on the UFO going into Mount Popo. It's over 2 million views at this point. That's, significant. A lot of people are interested in this. I don't know what that thing is. You've had people saying it's a meteor. I don't know. I haven't seen any other videos of meteors that have been made to look like that. So if it's a meteor, it seems unique to me. Then, last week, I discussed a second video of an object kind of moving over Mount Popo. El Popo is what they say in Mexico, El Popo. An object kind of roundish, I don't know what it is, globular kind of looking thing. Now, the resolution on all of these, we're talking YouTube here. No one's got original HD video to analyze, unfortunately. In fact, these were not shot with the best of cameras from what I'm understanding. And yet it was interesting because it didn't look like an aircraft of any kind. It didn't even look like a helicopter, frankly, which is what a couple of people said, oh, helicopter. And I think as I pointed out in previous weeks, there's a no-fly zone over El Popo. Doesn't mean that doesn't mean classified military things can't go over there. But again, why would they? It's an active volcano. So there's that. And now this week, a giant elongated something, again caught on the webcam, has exited the volcano. It looks very similar, frankly, to whatever it is that entered the volcano a couple of weeks ago. It's probably different. And you can find this. This is, it's all on YouTube. It's all current UFO news. This is, trying to look at the I don't even have the YouTube thing in front of me. You don't even need it. Just look up El Popo UFO and you'll see. This is all recent news. The point is, this was from a live cam just dated November 15th, just a couple of days ago. And it takes place over this cam takes a new image every, I think, 5 or 10 seconds. So what you've got is over a period of anywhere from half a minute to a minute, you have 5 different photos of this object that is ejected somehow from the volcano. Now, you might think, well, it's lava. But this thing it's absolutely straight. It goes straight up. There's no curvature like you would get from a lava ejection. Now, maybe it is. But right now it's causing quite a bit of a stir. This is 3 weeks in a row that something unusual is being video recorded at El Popo. I personally think it's quite fascinating, I must say. And then when you consider a couple of other things factoring into the equation here. One, this is a volcano with a very interesting history of photographic anomalies going over the last decade or so. I think I mentioned this in the past. A fascinating photograph. It's a legit photograph too. It's not a hoax, of a lighted object going toward the volcano on an obviously curved, spiraling path. It's a beautiful photograph. And there are no shortage of disc-like objects, flying saucer-shaped objects, basically, being photographed in the very, very close proximity to that volcano. At least 2 or 3 other UFO photographs that I can think of off the top of my head when I did a search on this. So people are watching that volcano and they're seeing what certainly do look like UFOs. And I do find that fascinating. Of course, on top of that, we have the added hoopla of the Mayan 2012 prophecy, all of which is centered, right there. And, or in, Mexico and Central America. So I don't personally think that the UFOs at El Popo are related to the 2012 prophecy or 2012 claims or predictions or what have you. But I do think it adds an extra bit of drama and mystery and color to our season at this time of year. And in fact, the question really is, do I personally think that these UFO sightings mean anything in particular? I would hazard to say that they probably do mean something. I would hazard to say that I think these are anomalous, at least in terms of our official definition of reality, that they are indicative of something happening in our world that's not supposed to be happening. That is, I think, if I were to make my own tentative conclusions, provisional conclusions, everything's provisional in this field, I think that, yes, these look like UFOs to me. I would say that it looks like there's UFO activity over El Popo. We'll come back to that, and I have a feeling everyone's going to be chiming in. Every appointed and self-appointed expert is going to have an opinion on this and hopefully come in with video analysis, and better resolution cameras would be nice. And then the other piece of news. I did discuss this last week, but man, this thing has blown up. It is an interesting news story from Denver about a UFO. And in fact, I've got a 3-minute clip of the original newscast from the Denver Fox affiliate. And Race has got it queued, and we're going to play it. It's only 3 minutes. I'd like you to hear it. Even though it was designed for TV, it works very well for radio. So just listen, and then I'll have a couple of words to say about it.
It's not a bird.
Keep going up and up
and up.
It's not a plane.
Here it's flipping around.
Even this aviation expert is mystified.
I can't identify it.
We first learned about these strange sightings when this metro area man, who does not want to be identified, brought us his home video.
You're going to see a little burst of fire right there, kind of a thruster.
He captured the images on his digital camera from a hilltop in Federal Heights, looking south towards downtown Denver.
Mile High is right about here.
He says the flying objects appear around noon or 1 p.m. at least a couple of times a week.
You're going to see it come in from the top, do a little loopy-doop.
The strangest part is they are flying too fast to see with the naked eye. This is the video in real time.
Poof, see it? That was it.
But if you slow it down frame by frame, it's there. We altered the color contrast to help you see it. Here's another one in real time. This is what it looks like slowed down. We wanted to verify that the video we saw was legit, so our photojournalist came out here with his camera. He set up in the same spot on 84th and Federal, and he shot video from just before noon until just after 1. And when we slowed down our photographer's video, we saw this flying object.
I would consider myself an expert.
Aviation expert Steve Cowell is a former commercial pilot, instructor, and FAA accident prevention counselor.
It's very strange.
He thought he would have a logical explanation until he watched the video.
That is not an airplane. That is not a helicopter. Those are not birds. I can't identify it.
Cowell told us he knows of no aircraft that flies as fast.
Because of the speed of the object, most people, I think, would miss it.
Cowell did say there is one other possibility.
Perhaps there's some sort of debris that's being raised up by some of the atmospheric winds.
But in his professional opinion,
as it fits the definition, it's an unidentified flying object.
The FAA tracks all air traffic in Colorado and across the country. The FAA sent us a statement saying, "We've checked with air traffic control and no one has had any reports of the activity you describe, nor have any of our employees observed anything of this nature either visually or on their radar displays." The North American Aerospace Defense Command is located in Colorado Springs. It keeps an eye on the skies in case of an air attack against the U.S. NORAD sent us this statement. Our command center reviewed their records and they did not have any noted air activity in the Denver area during the times you indicated.
There's the smokestack.
The man who first brought this to our attention believes the UFOs are launching and landing near 56th and Clay in Denver. A map shows only homes in the area. So is it a UFO, a secret military test, floating debris? The answer is anything but clear. It appears to be a mystery in the...
Well, there you have it. I mean, really an interesting story, and there are many websites that are kind of repeating this, taking it throughout the internet. Having looked at the image of this object, there are a number of people who have made the claim that they think it's bugs. And I'll tell you why I don't believe it's bugs. First of all, if you look at the image, it does not in any way look like any identifiable bug that you've ever seen. It looks like a grayish, silverish colored, very round craft, an object. And the other thing is that it only appears at a certain time of the day. And it's very well defined. They say between noon and 1 that this thing is zipping around the sky. There are bugs that may have their own little schedule, but that's a very, very exact schedule indeed. I think it's technology. I think it's someone's technology. And if that is the case, that's certainly what it looks like to me, then these things are only visible when you record them. Apparently you can't see them easily with the naked eye. And in the context of some of the technologies that I was discussing earlier in the show, the future technologies of what the military state is developing, I mean, I'm not saying that this is related to that, but I am suggesting that it could be. We're at a point in the study of what we call UFO phenomenon where it's a really confusing game. And the question is, what are our own society's legitimate capabilities in terms of technology and aviation and everything else. Because if we don't know what those capabilities are, we're going to have a very difficult time in understanding just what constitutes a UFO, if indeed we're looking for UFOs that do not originate from this civilization. I happen to believe that there are UFOs that do not originate from this civilization, but we are now in an era where the boundaries between what we're supposed to do and what we're not supposed to do, they seem to be very, very fuzzy. We don't really know as a society what our capabilities are. I mean, think about it. Go back 60 years to the world of 1950. All right, if you saw an object zigzagging through the sky silently in 1950, and there were such reports even back then of these types of things, or objects that accelerated from nothing and then instant acceleration and gone, and there were such reports of that, now that's significant because we can fairly confidently say that there were no human agencies known that could do these types of things. That's not the case anymore, or at least it may not be the case anymore with some of these UFO reports. So again, it's a very tricky area to research, and it just seems to me that the future of UFO research, one of the things it must do if it's going to be remaining, if it will remain irrelevant, excuse me, my tongue got tied up there, is that UFO research must incorporate cutting-edge knowledge of current and probable future technological developments, particularly of the military kind. Got to know what that stuff is. Otherwise, we don't have much of a chance. All right, look, let me take a break here. I'm Richard Dolan. And by the way, when I don't do True That Radio, I do write about UFOs. I'm the author of a number of books on the topic, two of them named UFOs in the National Security State, Volumes 1 and 2, a book about the future called AD After Disclosure. I have another book coming out in a few months. I'll tell you more about that sometime soon. Let us take a break. When we are back, Dane Wigington, expert in geoengineering, and we're going to have a fascinating 2 hours of discussion on all issues related to that. So don't go away. You've got a great treat coming up soon. Thank you.
And now